friends, it's Kayla Moran, and welcome back to the Let's Get Candid podcast. How's everybody doing today? Happy Thursday, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever day or time it is that you're listening. So happy to be back on the mic with you guys. I don't know how it's already mid-November. My 27th birthday is officially in 10 days, and I don't know what I'm going to write my birthday letter on. That is currently where I'm at. But after, I think you guys could kind of tell that the last few weeks I've been in this down phase, just kind of introspective and not really social. I was very much in hibernation, isolation mode, but I'm out of it now. And I'm so happy because I'm being so social. I'm being spontaneous. I'm saying yes to things again. And it feels really, really good to, you know, those moments are introspection and downtime are needed to appreciate these moments. And I was having a networking call yesterday and he was like, why did you say yes to me? Because normally a lot of people don't say yes to my messages on LinkedIn. And I was like, kind of just with life, I'm in a season of saying yes to things. I obviously can't say yes to everything, but I will RSVP. I will say yes to as many things as I possibly think I can. And then I will decide day of or day before if that's something I'm still able to do. And so I said yes to being open to a conversation. And it was a nice conversation to have. I don't know what's going to come out of it, if anything at all, but it was just nice to be open to things. I'm also in a season of letting go of people and opportunities and clients that are just not the right fit for me. I've been kind of, in the summer, I went through a rebrand and I've really modified my contracts and made sure that everything is tight and organized and being really intentional with the clients I work with and saying no to clients or turning down clients. Once I ever start working with them, hey, I can't continue to work with you. This is just not my ethos. This isn't something I'm looking for, or the projects I want to be a part of. And just knowing, having that focus and that intention, that introspection period was so needed to be able to do that and really understand my goals and my vision. And I think it's kind of what I talk about in this episode with the founder of Swirl Boutique. It's really about never giving up and having a vision and going for it and being open to seeing where things go. And of course, you're going to need to have a plan B sometimes. That's okay. But, being really intentional about what you're building and having a vision that's going to set you apart from other people in your space. Lisa and I talked about that a lot during this conversation. And, she's worked with celebrities and reality stars and she dresses them for events or for just every day. And she's done activation. She's worked with really cool brands. We get into all of that. But at the end of the day, the reason why she was able to do that is because she knew what set her apart and she knew what her model was and she had the experience to follow through on it. And, when you go off on your own very early on, like I did, it's hard to have that experience and have that know in your gut, is this a good decision? So it's hard sometimes to realize, oh, I have to, have a hard conversation, but that's part of the growth process. And I think growing a business, starting a business, growing a business, that is the greatest personal development tool entrepreneurship is. And we talk about the lessons that we've learned in business. And I feel like this year, 2024, was year 2 of my firm, but I felt like I was starting over. It's a completely different firm than when I started out, which is a beautiful thing. I'm grateful for it. And I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to learn those lessons and make the mistakes that I did because I can move forward better now and I can be more intentional with the colleagues and the mentors and the people that I go to for support. And, it's been an interesting journey, but I feel like I'm coming out of that. And it feels really, really good. So I think maybe that's what I'm going to write my birthday letter on. As you guys know, if you've been listening for a while, I always start my vision boarding and my intention and goal setting for the new year around my birthday because it's only a month before the new year. And I think, one of my yoga teachers on Monday in class, the intention for the class that she set was compassion for yourself. And that really struck me because I am someone who has always had a lot of rules for myself. And, I tried to have my walls up to protect myself from a perceived hurt, but usually that hurt never came. And it hurt me more having those rules and those walls up. So I'm learning to let go of them and be softer and open up. I've been saying I want to be softer and feminine for months now, but I realized that I couldn't actually do that if I still have those walls up. So that was another part of this introspection journey and this entrepreneurship journey of, giving myself grace and, forgiving myself for having set those rules and those walls up in the first place and hurting myself more. And, giving myself grace for the version of me that thought I needed to do that, and holding space for myself and looking at my inner child and hugging her and saying, I'm proud of you and I love you, and showing myself compassion. So that's why that really struck me on Monday. And I think that's maybe what I'm going to write my birthday letter on. Lessons I've learned in life and business, which I kind of did last year, but I think we could even more unpack that from a lens of compassion and grace and forgiveness, and, being softer and being more feminine and being spontaneous and saying yes to things that maybe we never would have said yes to before. As I enter this, my late 20s, this next chapter of my life, I feel like this shift is really monumental, and I want to unpack that more. So maybe that's what I'm writing my birthday letter on. But that's a little bit about what I've been up to around here. I'm excited for this conversation with Lisa. It was a fun one. It was a late night one. And it's just nice to talk to other female founders, female business owners who have a plethora of diverse experiences and can really we connect on a deeper level. Like, entrepreneurial women just really that they have a soft spot in my heart for sure. And with that, I am still planning to go on hiatus at the end of this year. So I will see you guys in season 3, but we are doing a season 3. We are going to just be more intentional about it, keeping in theme. I have a couple more episodes for you guys, and then we'll do a big solo episode, vision boarding, goals and intentions episode for 2025. And then I will see you guys all in the new year. But I wanted to let you guys know, because I kind of have been thinking out loud in these intros the last couple of weeks of where I want this podcast to go. But I was reminded a couple of days ago by a law student that this podcast matters and this podcast is important and people do listen to it. And I am a role model for people, and I want to continue being that. My goal has always been to inspire and empower. And that's the whole point of the Let's Get Candid podcast. And I'm going to be a guest on a couple other podcasts throughout the next couple of months too. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to that. So stay tuned. Make sure to follow me on social media. And if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review. Please subscribe to the show, share with a friend, tag us as you're listening. Let me know who you want to see next, what topics you want me to cover in 2025. And I will see you guys in next week's episode. Meet Lisa. Lisa, what's something that people wouldn't know about you just from following you?
Oh, gosh. I feel like I'm so focused on my business that I don't share as much, personal details about me or kind of my thought process behind the boutique. But I think the one thing that people will be kind of shocked to find out, that I'm just not fashion driven, that I'm business driven, that I love business. And that really gets my gears turning. I love thought meetings. I love going into other businesses. I love, picking those CEO brains. I'm very interested on how everything works, kind of from a micro level to a bigger level. So that, I think, is one thing that people wouldn't notice about me, particularly from following us on Instagram, and how passionate I guess I am about brand partnerships. So having the right brand, the right fit, the right ethos of brand in my stores is very, very important to me, and how that feels to me. I want it to feel to my consumers, my customers. So I'm very particular on who we let into the store as far as brand partnerships go, and who we kind of move forward with and have our loyalty to, because I really want to make sure that that fits our, ethics, that fits their ethics, and we're really aligned in that way.
I actually love that was your answer, because it's something that my mom and I talk a lot about. Just like when I was in high school and boutiques started becoming a lot more popular than malls. There's a couple of big ones here in Miami that, everyone would go to. So we started going to them and we liked them. And then looking now, we're like, that isn't really the same brand that we originally bought into when we started going there. So the fact that you consider that is important to you, that you keep that focus on that, not just money or trends or other things that you're very susceptible to sometimes in industries like this. So what was the reason for you starting your boutique? Was that your first business? Walk me through the process of starting Swirl.
Yeah, that was my first business. So I was 23 when I started, so very young. I feel like I did a lot of learning through mistakes. I did a lot of, touch and go, thinking I knew what I was doing, but obviously not knowing what I was doing in the same breath. But being so young gave me the courage to make those mistakes, and I think I really learned from that. I don't know now at my age that I would really want to feel comfortable making those kind of mistakes at that time, but I think having almost a naivety about it really kind of helped me strengthen, the do's, the don'ts, the whys of how I operate my business. And I basically just was like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. And I learned along the way. So that was something that was really cool. And then I was able to, in a downturn economy, I opened up my store in 2006. And I don't know if you've had to deal with, but we went through a recession. So that was really fun. So basically, I, put all my nest egg in the store in 2006, and we ended up going through a recession, and that changed obviously the economics of most every single person I know, and it made me have to change my business. I had to evolve, I had to adapt. At one point I was carrying men's, women's, kids, tweens, home, and it really just wasn't working the way it used to right before the economy kind of basically exploded on us. So what I had to do is redefine my offerings, and what I found is that women, no matter what economy, will still shop, will still want to find things that are new, will still want to do some retail therapy. So I really refocused my store into all women's. I brought in some different price points, kind of took out what wasn't working, brought in what was, which is again women focused. And from there, I was able to open up my second location in Orange County and get a nice lease there because, again, in a downturn economy, I think that's the best time to really actually push through and start actually opening and doing businesses, because you're not at the top of market, and usually can find either great deals on leases, great deals in product, and just getting into spaces that maybe you couldn't once get into. So I felt like that was a strong move that we made right then at that time as well. And then from there in 2019, I was able to open up Carlsbad. And then just recently, we opened up a new store in Encinitas.
That's so cool. I love this like economy, like business lesson, as my parents are both in finance and my dad's in banking. So he actually, I remember that recession. I was in middle school and he got laid off. So I remember that vividly. There was an election year also, like there was just a lot going on at that time and it affected everything. I vividly remember that. And I grew up at the dining room table hearing them talk about business. And I think the fact that, like I said, like the business is your focus, and that the lessons that you learn, the do's and don'ts and what's working and what's not, and sticking true to your ethos versus what other people are doing, those are lessons that, yeah, like you said, like it's naivety. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. Like if we knew now what, like back then, like we probably wouldn't have done all the things that we've done, like my mom and I were talking about this today too. Like, I wouldn't go back and change it now, but when people ask me how I got my start, I tell them a lot of advice that people told me that I said no to. That looking back, I wish I would have heeded a little bit more. It's worked out for me the long way, the harder way. But if I could, go back and not struggle as much, maybe I would do things a little differently. But it all works out like the way that it's supposed to. Do you have other business or just these 4 stores now?
Just the 4 stores, but I'm interested in all business. So right now, this keeps me pretty busy. So but I love, like I'll walk into, for example, we have some really great brand partnerships, and I'll walk into their offices and I get to know their CEOs, and I ask them all the questions. I'm like, hi, can I just shadow you for a day? Because I just find that so interesting, even from like a wholesale perspective of how things are created, how things are shipped, what the cost of shipping is, what to get it over here into the States if it's, not domestic. What are those things like? I want to know the details. I want to know how they do their plannings, how do they do their season buys, how do they know when to drop styles that aren't working that maybe they had in the collection, and basically how does it go to the retailer from me to other retailers, and how do you know when something's a hit, and how do you know how much to buy? Because there's minimums on products. So for a lot of your listeners that don't know fashion, there's minimums on the buy that each brand, like let's say, I'll give an example, your Anthropologie, right? Or your Reformation, you buy a dress, there's a certain minimum that you need to make in order to have said dress, and that's how you're wholesaling it. And so you have a certain amount of units that you're wholesaling out to other vendors, other retailers. So how do you know what's going to be a win, what's not going to be a win, how much to buy. I mean, those are all so important. And that's like trickles down to us, the vendor, and how we operate in store and how we showcase product and do we buy enough of it. So all of those things are like really fascinating to me. And I love retail, especially obviously, but I am just interested in business in general. I'm just such a like nerd for stuff like that it really
Oh, me too.
fascinates me. And I want to know everything about every single part of the process.
I think that's what sets you apart, maybe, because for me, I'm the same way. I'm a nerd. I want to know everything about everything. At least, like, I want to know enough about everything to be dangerous. Like, I never want to get caught with, like, oh, I don't know something. Let me get back to you. I'm like, oh, did
Yeah.
you know the blah, blah, blah? Like, just like a random, that might be the only thing I know, but at least I, like, know what you're talking about. And I'm not just giving you, like, a 10,000, like, mile stare. How did you learn all this stuff? Like you said, like, you like to go in, you build these relationships, and then you go shadow for a day. But that's now. When you were 23,
Right.
where did you, what resources, what books, like, how did you learn business, or just by doing?
I mean, I did have a couple of mentors back in the day. So I had mentors that literally would, I'd learn how to do the buying from. I had an innate sense of retail because I was doing that since I was like 17 years old. I ran the sales floor at Macy's at one point. I did independent retail. I did obviously, corporate retail. So I had an idea, but some of the nitty gritty, like how do you go and write an order for a buy for a store, which sounds like the most fun part, which it kind of is. I mean, honestly, it kind of is, but you also have to buy for your client and identifying your client. And I think I'm a very intuitive person, so I think that came naturally to me, that I didn't just buy for something that I wanted in the store that I would wear necessarily. It was for the client that was walking in my doors. And I would take notes of like, what is she gravitating towards? What sizes are the most popular? What's her lifestyle? What does she like to do on an afternoon? Is she a mom? Is she, going out every weekend? Is she traveling? Like I had to really understand the client from that perspective first. And I think that's a great tip for anybody. Like really get to identify your client before you decide to launch a brand or launch, a store or a business, and know your demographic. And I think that's really important. So honestly, a lot of it was just intuition and just seeing and observing. And I like to, probably to a default, I really like to gather as much as I can before I actually strike, which is kind of my personality. And it's the way I kind of do everything, to be honest with you. I know we have this other store. We've had it for 2 months and I still haven't announced it yet because I just haven't felt like it's been the right time to announce it. So it's stuff like that I get really kind of, internal with, I guess. And I just really need to kind of like hold on to all this information, digest it, and then, take those lessons. And that's how I usually operate my business. And it sounds really, I guess there's no specific way that makes sense when I'm saying it, but at the same time, it makes sense to me because that's just the person that I am. And I think if more people stopped and actually paid attention to who their client is or what they're trying to sell or what problem it's trying to solve, I think, you'd be a lot more successful.
100%. I mean, what you just said of maybe other people don't understand it, but it works for you. That's how you understand it. That's all that matters. Like with anything in life, it doesn't matter what other people think. It only matters what you think. And to your point, I used to be somebody who would, like, I've never been the girl, for example, that like, oh my God, he texted me, like, put it in the group chat. What do I say to him? I make up my own decision. Like I do it first, but then I'll second guess it after the fact. I'm like, should I have done that? Should I have said that? What do I like? And it's like, you already did it. Like, who cares? It's like, so I was very impulsive at the beginning. As I've gotten older, I've learned to do a little bit more research and like really sit with it. And like, does this make sense for me? And, you mentioned mentors. I've had really great mentors and I've had some not so great ones. You have to be really selective with who you call a mentor and who you listen to and who you confide in and get advice from. Sometimes intuition, you're the only one who really can make that decision. So when it's the right opportunity for you. To your point too of figuring out who your demographic is, who your client is, a lot of people go into business. There's this big entrepreneurship boom, especially after the pandemic. Nobody wants to work for anybody. No, everybody wants to work remote. So everybody thinks like, let me just start a business because it like, freelance, you can make a whole business becoming a freelancer and then quickly become an entrepreneur. There's a pipeline there. And maybe that works for some people. But I think people forget that there is like the hard part is like, besides like budgeting and finances and like the emotional side of the roller coaster of it all, but also, who are you serving? Like what works for you maybe you're not your ideal client. Like you're still, you
Right.
have a store that sells to teenagers. You're no longer a teenager. Like, how do you knowing how to buy for a teenager when that's not you anymore, and having that
Right.
foresight. And I think, how did you, like, what are some tools for someone to figure out who their demographic is? What should they look for?
Oh gosh. Well, I think it's also like solving a problem too, right? Like what are you solving that somebody down the street isn't solving?
Yeah.
For us, looking at the retail side of things, I'm solving a niche where people can come in, they can get styled. Our team here is more like stylists. We're not just girls that work behind a counter and ring you up. We're really here with you. We're here from the moment you walk in to the moment you tell us about what your next event is, and we're pulling things, we're getting you ready, we're pulling things from other locations, we're having you come out, we're suggesting items. So I think we're really more like a stylist. So I feel like that sets us apart from other brick and mortars. Like it's definitely more of like a personal experience when you walk through the door. And like I said, think of it as like a stylist. If you had your own personal stylist, that's basically what we are every time that you walk into a Swirl Boutique. So I identified that. That's something that people still want. That's something I've been doing since 2006. And I don't think that's going anywhere. I think people still love that individual attention, even if they shop online, which we do have an online store. Like, don't get me wrong, that's definitely like a great tool to have in business. But we really focus on that kind of personal connection. And we get your information. Sometimes you share it with us and we text you when your favorite brands arrive. We send you pictures. So we really leaned into that personal shopping experience, which really is the backbone and the core of what we do and why we're so successful in stores, and why we're able to open up different locations when most everybody's going digital, and that's more of their stronger layer to their business. And again, looking at these brands that you can't get anywhere else that we're bringing in. So that's something that we really focus on too. Our brand partnerships, we do a lot of activations in stores. So we basically bring these brands to life, and we have these like shopping parties that are layered experiences that you can do a really fun, like, build your own bracelet bar or build your own hat bar, and you can have some drinks and cocktails and listen to music. And it's more of a community that we offer when you're in one of our stores. And that's something that, again, I've been doing that probably not from an intentional level when I was 23, but that was something that I was kind of cultivating as the stores were growing. I would do all these events. I would do offsite events. I would bring people in, do pop-ups. So we're always out there really looking, just like our main goal is to make community and have these like fun events too. But again, the shopping comes afterwards because, oh, well, we have great stuff too. So that's really never the main focus. It's more of that lifestyle community basis that we really promote through either our Instagram, our events, the way we treat people in store. And then, of course, the cherry on the top is, wow, they have really cute stuff. So
Yeah.
that's always fun too. Yeah.
No, that's why I still prefer boutiques, or at least in general, just shopping in person, because you don't get that community, that human experience. Like shopping online, like on top of the fact that I have to tailor everything because my proportions are off. So buying online sometimes is really annoying because then you're buying 3 different pairs before you find the right pair of jeans. When you go try it on in store, they'll tell you, like, does that actually look good on you? Or like, how about if you like that style, have you seen this one? And like, yes, there's that side of like, oh, they just want me to buy more because it's more money. But at the same time, it's that personalized, like they want to, I like when they take interest in me and like get to know, like you mentioned like earlier, lifestyle, like what events do you have coming up? Or, oh, you could also wear this on, like, if you go, like, it's winter, like if you're going on a holiday, like you could style it this way for a little bit more winter look, especially like you and I both live in warm weather places like year round. How can we make this more fall and winter when it's 90 degrees outside? Put this color with it or something. Like that to me is what makes a boutique still something that I prefer personally. And like digital can be nice. It's nice sometimes, like instant
Both.
gratification. It's easy. Like I like that you have the option of both. But I want to touch on that brand partnership side because you've mentioned it a couple of times. And I think this is so unique. Activations, like you said, and building relationships. It goes to building relationships with your customers, building relationships with the brands that you bring into your store, and PR teams and things like that to be able to pull off these events and gifting and things like that. You mentioned like you didn't really know that was like kind of an intuition thing. Like you didn't realize at 23 that that's what you were doing, but that's very innovative. And even now, like that's still kind of becoming like an innovative new thing. Where did you first get the idea? Like, when was your first brand partnership, and like, how did it come to be? Walk me through that step of how you build a good brand partnership with someone.
Well, I think we want to make sure that I always get on any call for any brand partnership, and I'll kind of answer the second part first. And I want to make sure our goals align. Like, what are we
That's
both
huge.
here to do? And I feel like sometimes you guys can miss the boat if one of you wants to drive more sales, the other one wants to drive more traffic, the other one wants to do more brand recognition. So you really have to identify, like, what are both of your goals first and foremost. So
Absolutely.
we kind of do it. I guess it's almost like a lineup for, if I've never really thought about it this way, but it's kind of like a lineup for like a Coachella. You have your main act, which is going to be like that brand partnership, and then you have the layers kind of underneath that act. So what we're looking for is maybe another, complimentary jewelry artist or an accessories partner. We're looking at, okay, do we have a great, beverage partner that we can incorporate that either wants some exposure or somebody that, so we basically start kind of thinking about it as more of like, what is the experience? What is our goals? What's the theme, even down to like, okay, is this a summer event? So, okay, would coconuts, be really fun to have at this event, like with our customers with our branded logo on it? Would it be more fun to showcase, some ciders or some like wintry fun cocktails? So we really kind of look at it from every angle of like what's the budget. So what is everybody bringing to the table? Like, who has what for what budget, and like, what are we looking at, and like, who's going to be responsible for what? And then we look at how we're promoting it, who we're reaching out to, who we're inviting, which is always our customers. And, we have a handful of influencers we like to have attend these events. And then what else do we want to reach out to? Do we need press? Do we need, so we really have this kind of built out list of how we actually operate. And we definitely kind of start from the top, and then we kind of build out all the little details. And we always want to showcase something different, right? We don't want to ever feel like it's the same exact event. Oh, you're going to Swirl event. Okay, it's going to be the same event I've seen. I mean, we've transformed the back into a bull riding area where we had a mechanical bull one time. For this really cool Australian brand. So we really, every time you walk into an event, like, our goal is to also make it feel like something different. We don't want it to feel the same. We want it to be another like integrative experience that, obviously keeps people walking around. Like, we want a couple activations, because if you're shopping, okay, that's super fun. We love shopping. That's always obviously a given, but we really want the momentum of the event to be moving at all times. So we want different activations in different areas, and we'll have something outside, and then we'll have something, in our main room. And then again, it all leads back to shopping, but that's never our main focus. Like, that's never something we kind of lead with. And for us, it's always, brand recognition, giving back to the community, providing something fun for the community to do on a Saturday, and just making those connections with our customers, influencers, and friends.
Yeah, I love that. The bull riding sounds fun. I'm a little too scared to ride a mechanical bull, I'm not gonna lie. But I like seeing it, and like I like seeing other people do it, and I'm just like, one day maybe I'll get the courage. But like, I love that's something so unique and special to you guys. And I've been to events as an influencer before where there's not activations. Like, there'll be food and drinks, but I remember like I saw like a couple other girls there that I knew, and we just all stood in a corner talking. We were catching up because like, there, besides shopping, there was nothing to do. And like,
Right.
it's just awkward. It's like, okay, like, how many times can I walk around the same store? Like,
Totally.
it's like awkward. It's so, I like that you guys have like, I like that there's a thought behind it and an intention. But you mentioned budget. Obviously, you started a business at 23. A lot has changed since then, but how do you budget for, starting a business and knowing that you're a product and a service-based business, both of them? You have to have staff to work, and you're paying them an hourly rate to come in and provide a service, dressing your clientele, but you also have the clothes to provide the product. So how did you start budgeting as, in your mid 20s, like, for this? And obviously now, like, you're adding a lot more, your budget has to go further because you're providing more things, these activations, these services, these other things. But talk to me about starting a business and bootstrapping it.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I think by bootstrapping in the first, it was just me all the time. So it was hard to have that growth, because it was me doing everything. I was doing the social media, well, not social media. At that time, it wasn't social media, but all the press that we had. And we actually advertised in magazines. That's how like long ago this was. There was no social media. I think there was like MySpace, maybe Facebook just started. And again, attending events. But I worked 7 days a week. I was in the store. So I really didn't have the opportunity to do that until like a much later time. So I realized that everything I was putting back into the business, whether it was whatever I was making, I was also putting back into the business. So I was realistic in my goals of, okay, this is going to take some time to build. It doesn't happen overnight, especially after
It's
the
important.
recession. I had to restructure. So I ended up buying styles that were a little bit less of a price point, because at that time we had really, I would say we're now more of a median, like to sometimes lower price point, but before we had like, the high price points. I mean, we were selling kids clothes at like, and this is in 2006, like $80 for a dress, for a splendid dress. So we really had to redefine, what our messaging was. We brought in some local jewelry artists that would make really special pieces. So and to this day, that's our message too with the artists, that we have all these really great women local jewelry artists. So basically all these, like, I would call them other entrepreneurs within our space that have their own businesses. So I think, to answer your question, really, it was me just putting in the sweat equity of myself and, doing it 24/7. Again, being that young, it was nice because I didn't have any other responsibilities to really attend to. I didn't have a family. I was just me. So it was like something I could definitely do. But I always tell people, like, you don't want to, I know people go viral and things happen and things are insane
It's
and
too
like, quick sometimes, but for the most part, you really have to think of it in a long-term plan, like how, and have maybe a backup plan or be able to adapt if you need to right away. You can't say, okay, this is my business model, this is what I'm doing. I mean, if it's not working, you need to be able to change and be able to be adaptable. You have to pivot, and you have to evolve with the times too, because things change so rapidly that you have to also have that, you have to see what's coming and have, like you said, the foresight to know what's next.
110%. I see it a lot where people like, you can't have a plan B because if you have a plan B, it means you think that plan A is going to fail. And it's like, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I think you have to have some sort of safety net, but at the same time, the beauty of being in your mid 20s and going all in. I started my law firm at 24. Same thing. Unmarried, no kids. I could live at home. It's 2 years later, still living at home. Still unmarried and no kids also, but like we're that's a work in progress. But I'm still living at home. I'm saving to buy a house. And I'm only 27. Like, it's okay. No one can take my license away from me. If I'm going to start my own business, this is the time to do it. And I could always go back later. And that was my plan B, was I could always go back, but right now, why not? And, for you, it was, you're going to be there all day, every day, and you're going to put in the sweat equity and, you'll figure it out. You're willing to adapt. And my dad's a Marine. He always would say, improvise, adapt, overcome. Like, that's something that they're ingrained in boot camp. And I grew up with that mentality of like, it's only a failure if you don't learn from it. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to say this didn't work out and try something new. It doesn't mean that it's a failure. It just means it didn't work. But there's something good out of that lesson, of that situation. You could learn from it and try again next time. And maybe you won't make that same mistake now. And I think too many people nowadays, they want virality. They want instant success. They want instant gratification. They scale too quickly. And then it's a lot harder to, come back down to earth. And that's when, then like, oh my God, I'm a failure. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're not. It's okay. It didn't work the first time. You can try again.
Yeah. And I think that's why I feel so almost happy about my experience, because I was able to see it from that perspective. So everything I'm grateful for. And now I'm in a position where I can actually, make those smart financial decisions. And like, I've hired a really amazing accounting team, because that's not my strength, and they tell me, okay, you can do this, you can do that. We have our quarterly meetings, and, this is where you need to improve your margins on. That's something we've been working on, like getting our margins better. So I'm hearing all these things, looking at the payroll, looking at just the overall cost of doing business. Is this working? Is this not working? Is this category, even as small as that, like, is this category working for you? Do we need to get rid of it? Do we need to make some changes? And they've really helped me put those things into perspective. And now it's easier because I have, the finances to do so, to be able to put these really great people in these great spots, where I'm maybe not the best person for that job. So,
I can't do math. That's a big thing. I think that's the most important thing out of everything you just said, is like knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and knowing when to hire for your weaknesses, because you can do your strengths. However, there also comes a time where even though that's your strength, you still do have to delegate it, because as the founder of the business, are you the founder and the CEO, or are you just the founder? Or are you just like, what's your role, and understanding where your role is best and delegating, even if it's your strength, but most definitely if it's your weakness. And same, my accountant, I was texting her earlier today. I could not, I mean, it's the beginning of the month, we're going over P&Ls from last month and double checking where things are. And that's the side of business that people don't see. Like they don't think about that. They don't talk about it because money is scary. But having a team you trust, which I want to touch on, but how did you know when to start, I did it too, like reinvest in everything I made back into the business. When did you know, okay, I need to start paying myself a salary? It's not just sweat equity anymore. I need to pay myself. My time is valuable too. And how much did you pay yourself at the beginning? Like when did that come about?
I mean, honestly, not a lot. And I'd still say I'm very conservative about what I take, because in that point too, it was in the growing phase. And you have to, again, recognize that. Are we in a growing phase? Are we in, are we in our success phase? What phase are we in? Obviously I did enough to support myself, but from most people's perspective, I'm sure they would have taken more or allocated more for themselves. And I still, to this day, I still put a lot of whatever I make back into the company. I just do. That's just been my mantra. That's how I've always ran it. It was nice, when that shifted a little bit, to be able to give myself a little bit more. That was definitely a nice feeling. And that's when I started to feel like, okay, now we really need to start hiring these right people and putting these people in place of, if I'm doing stuff like this, then we really now need to have the right team to support me behind me. And I don't work in stores anymore. I pretty much, for the most part, I'm in stores, but I'm not working the sales floor. So I just have taken myself out of that, because I did realize that my time is more valuable spent like thinking about how to improve the business, not working per se in the business, if that makes sense. And
working
I started
in the business versus on the business.
Yes. Right. And I think I learned that lesson in the pandemic, when I totally had to step away. And honestly, I kind of loved it, low key loved it, because it was a time that I finally felt like I could actually just work on the business without having the pressure of being in the stores every day, all day. And I think I really took myself out of that scenario, and I just never looked back. And I realized that I had more momentum behind me when I didn't do that all day long. And I wasn't, styling customers all day, which I still love to do and I still will do, but it's something that I think working on the business was giving us a better momentum for us to actually expand and do more. Absolutely. So, and that was hard. And I think I just had my conversation with one of my managers, and she was saying, she's like, you delegate now so much better. Like, you're so much better at that. Because I was like, well, yeah, I had to, because I really realized I can't grow. I can't open up new locations. I can't do more if I'm always here, if that makes sense. So I had to learn that kind of the hard way. And I think, again, that pandemic was a nice push, which I'm sure it was for a lot of people, on how to redefine their business if they had an existing successful business. And it really taught me some lessons. I don't need to be here 24/7. And in fact, maybe it's better if I'm not. And I'm actually kind of looking at the bigger scheme picture things and doing the bigger idea things, and, figuring out what's next versus what is.
Yeah, which I think goes also to knowing who your audience is and who your brand is, and hiring and buying clothes and services and products for them and not for you, because you're able to take your ego out of it. And I think it goes back to that virality, instant gratification, make a lot of money mentality that a lot of people have nowadays. If you're doing this for the money, it's a lot harder to remove yourself from it when you realize that you have to put systems and processes in place, and you can't be everywhere at once, and you can't do everything. And it's actually okay to do less, but be more intentional with it. That might serve you more than being everywhere to everyone at all times, especially as women, having a family, having a traveling, with your friends, those, I'm at that transition point in my life where okay, right now I can work till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. But in a few years, hopefully I won't be able to, because I have a family. So how can I set up habits and routines now that will allow me to scale back to be present in a different place? Does that mean I have to hire? Does that mean I have to, get interns to eventually hire them up? You have to start thinking foresight and planning, which, if you're doing this for ego or money, sometimes it's not as easy to do. But who was your first hire? in the business and then on the business, like your front end team that like the clients see, the customers see, and then like the back end team that supports you in your efforts?
Oh gosh, my first hire would have, yeah, probably end of 2007 maybe was my first hire. And then for back end, I think I started working with like a social media person and graphic designers, obviously too, like back in the day. Before there was like Canva, you always had a graphic designer. So, people like that, like more freelance style people. And then honestly, my accounting team, I still have the same person doing the general accounting, but like on the bigger scale accounting team, probably in the last like 3 years, honestly. So it's taken me a while to get to that place where I've actually like really finally like given everybody their proper job and said, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this, you're doing this. And now we have somebody that's remote for us that lives in Tennessee, that she does a lot of like the day-to-day stuff that kind of alleviates, the emails from me. I'm sure like you have the same thing, like an influx of emails and you're and she goes over priority. Okay, this is what we're doing today. This is what really needs a response. Like, what do we think about this? So I really have somebody that's kind of like prioritizing my day too, which I think is really helpful, and just making sure that we're as efficient and effective as we are with like the amount of time. Cause now I'm also a mom now. I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So, and I'm also at home with them. So it really like my time has really gotten even more finite than it was before. So I really have to think about it in those ways. Like, okay, if I only have 3 hours today, what is the most important thing? And I honestly think some of these boundaries in business have really, again, the pandemic and having my kids really helped me shape some of those boundaries, because I don't just have all the time in the world now just to do anything that I wanted. I really have to get, intentional about the time that I do have.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that I'm learning as I progress into the next chapter of my life is like, it was cute and fun when I had all the time in the world and no responsibility. Now that I'm a business owner and it's actually doing really well and I have a lot of taxes to pay, it's time to get a lot more focused and be more intentional with where my money is going and how I'm saving and when I'm spending and, with my time, like structuring my day. And like you said, like it does get a lot more finite and it only gets even more so when those things do come along, family and that. So I think, yeah, the pandemic it did a lot of bad, but it did a lot of good in the sense I think it allowed us all to really kind of go back to the drawing board and be like, is this working for me? And how can I make this work for me more? Like my goals have changed. My vision has changed. Like how can I make this align with me and my goals and my lifestyle? Which is something that you mentioned at the beginning of, your client's lifestyle. Like, who are you serving? What are they a California girl? Are they more preppy? Are they more like, what's the vibe of what we're trying to do here? Who do I want to serve and who do I enjoy working with the most? And that's something that I've had to do like with my clients. Like, do I want to work with someone at their worst point in their lives or like the best point in their lives? Like an exciting time or like a really tragic time? Like, where are my strengths? Like what do I enjoy doing, but also where can my skill set be best utilized? And I think that's really hard to do, but the pandemic did allow us to kind of take a step back and do that. But because you are a mom and time is finite, how do you navigate that now? You said you have someone manage the day-to-day for you. You're not really as active on the store floor anymore, styling clients yourself. But like, what does a typical week in the life look like for you? How do you find time to be present for yourself and your family and your business?
Well, I first always tell people like balance, there really is no balance. It's either
it's a myth.
you either feel like you're really hitting something really well, like you're doing really good at business, or you're really good at being a mom that day. I feel like I'm, because I'm kind of relatively a new mom too, because I have a 2 and a 1-year-old, so I'm still learning those balances. A typical day will usually look like, I'm the worst. I look right at my email. That's what I do.
Same. Me too. I need to. My anxiety won't let if I tried really hard to not be that person. I would be more anxious because I didn't know what was going on right now. Now I'm like at 6:30, I check my emails. I'm like, okay, I don't have anything till 10. I can go do yoga and like I can breathe. So I'm with you on that.
Right,
100%.
right. And especially with what you do too, I feel like, you have customers probably emailing you at all times and needing things. So, I mean, it would be really hard for you not to be reactive, I guess, probably in your inbox.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the first thing we do. I identify any like, big problems, obviously, we want to make sure that the stores are, attended by whoever's working that day. And then usually my remote gal gets on about, 10 or 11, and that's usually when the stores kind of open. So she looks at her email, she'll kind of get that done. Then we devise a plan of like what's priority for today. So we let the team know, okay, this is priority for today. Or if there's anything that's outstanding, we look at that. And then we look at our day too. Like, okay, we might have had, let's say it was Friday. We had these items to check off the list, and we didn't get, 2 of the items. Okay, we circle back on Monday. Okay, let's look at what we have that really needs an answer. And some things I can give you an answer right away. Some things I need to think about. Some things I need to go home and like look at. And we just kind of usually attack our day in that way. And then sometimes we have things that are already set up. Like I would say, oh, I have a podcast today. I'm blocked out from X date to X date. And she'll look at that, and then she'll get her other stuff done. So we really kind of, between her and I, manage the day, I guess is the best way to say it. And then anything that comes up that's, maybe the checkout's not working, or maybe we need this, or, it could have been, oh, well, this client came in, they had this question. Do we have an answer? She kind of deals with that, and our in-store managers. So that takes me away from that. And then I look at, again, the bigger picture stuff, or things that really just only can use me for that answer. Yeah. Or if it's an order that needs to be approved, okay, we have this coming. Do we want to allocate this to? And, so it's just, honestly, it's not as glamorous as it seems when you're working in fashion. I mean, sometimes it is, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it's just like any other business, like really looking at what's priority. Sometimes customers' emails come up and they're like, okay, how do we solve this? I guess a lot of our day is solving problem solving, and making sure that, because things happen that are sometimes out of our control, and just obviously giving the best customer service to our clients, making sure our team understands what the priorities are for the day. And, again, things just come up. So we really have to be kind of prepared for that as well. But, like the other day I went to L-Space HQ. We're doing this really fun activation. So that was a block off date that we had to go to L-Space, and I had to be present for that. And that was like a 3 or 4 hour meeting. And we took content that day, and we kind of built out our dream event for fall with their team. And in the middle of that day, we, had a theft that happened. So I had to like stop the meeting, go outside, check on the girls. And then our in-store manager kind of handled the procedure on that. So, I mean, stuff like that happens all the time, especially with multiple locations. So you could be in the midst of what you think your day is, and then something else kind of pops up. And I think for us, and it sounds like you too, like our biggest thing is like how to stay on track and not address all these kind of micro issues throughout the day, but still like meet our goals.
Yeah, I saw something. Yeah, today has been a doozy. No, I saw something. I don't know if it was yesterday or today on Threads, but it's like when you are putting out fires, you have to remember that you can't put out every fire. Like even like in the same county or in the same city, there's different fire stations or different hoses. Like you can't do everything. You can't be everywhere all at once. And understanding, I like that you have like what's outstanding, what's priority, what can roll over to Monday. It doesn't have to be done right now, but this, I do need to step away from this to focus on this. Like figuring out, I always say like having some sort of like guide, whether for you, maybe it's more your intuition or systems and processes, but I think there has to be a little bit of both. Like it can't just be like everything be automated and systematic, because then you lose that human element, which is, for me, is very important in my business, even though there is people who have everything very formal in my space. And then, but for you, you're talking to people all day long. This is how they look, how they feel, confidence. There's a lot more to it. It's like a hairdresser, like it's like the female version of a bartender, like helping a teenage girl get ready for prom, like that you're helping out a lot more than just an outfit. There is that human element, understanding like when that does need to be you versus somebody else. It can get really hard to, I think, know, like you said, like when I need to be there and when I don't need to be there. But also like recognizing like you do want to be there as much as you can, because it is your baby. It is your business. It's your name at the end of the day that's on the door. What do you do to like unwind at the end of the day after like a really crazy fire, like everywhere day? Like what's your like self-care routine, especially as a new mom too?
Yeah. And well, I do a couple things, and this is something I do throughout the week. I'll do acupuncture, where I'll just sit in a room literally with silence and just needles in my body.
Do you do it yourself?
Yeah. Oh no, I have somebody that does it.
But okay, I was like, wait, I would like that. Yeah, I want to try it so bad.
It's these little rooms, and you just sit there, and honestly, there's maybe a little bit of music in the background, but for an hour, Like I'm not reachable. I'm just kind
I
of by
love it.
myself with
That's
my
my dream in life.
and I have all these great endorphins because I'm having the, all the different points from the needles, which I really love. So I love doing something like that, or getting a spa treatment or my nails done, things like that. Like I love doing that. But at the end of the day, um, I usually start dinner like around 5-ish for my kids, and then I'm pretty much not available. And then I just kind of take a deep breath and I go, okay, today is over, like time for a new, and just we sit, we eat our food. I'll pop on like one of my fun shows on my phone and just kind of like have a little bit of me time. And then at the end of each night, I usually walk my dog just around my neighborhood, and that really kind of like relaxes me and just kind of puts me in the headspace of like, okay, this is winding down. It's very simple, but again, as a new mom, there's not a lot of extravagant things I can go do. I can't go sit in a spa and like a bath for like an hour and disconnect like I normally would. But now just the little things, I just kind of find joy in the little rituals that I have in the evening that really kind of put me at ease and kind of lower the cortisol and make sure that you're, kind of winding down for the day so you can get a good night's rest. And I really prioritize sleep. I'm a big sleeper. And I think that's a big battle too. If you're, mentally, if you're on all cylinders all day, you really need to get sleep. And that's a big thing that I've learned. A lot of hydration, putting good food into my body, good vitamins, good minerals. Like that's all important. I feel like that just sets me up for success the next day.
Yeah. I think the sleep thing is something I've always been more of an insomniac, but I have to I really have to try hard to be like, okay, put the phone down. Like nothing's going to get done at this time of night. It's okay. Just let it go or stop scrolling on TikTok sometimes. Like it could go either one. I'm like at that point in my life where it's like the like I'm like in between millennial and Gen Z, and it's like some days are more millennial, like very business. I'm working till midnight, and other days I'm like just scrolling on the internet until 1 a.m. That was last night.
Yep.
But it's funny. I actually had this conversation with my mom today too, of I'm looking forward to that ritual of like taking care of a home and like cooking dinner and like putting on my show or like putting on like a podcast or something and just unwinding, but like being focused on something that is not work.
Yeah.
And like isn't like it's not putting out a fire. It's just like being present with my people and my family and my friends. Like I actually very much look forward to that day. So I like that that's something you mentioned, like, we have all these like self-care little rituals and like going to the spa and like nails, like all these things, like we love it. But sometimes it's as simple as just like being with your people really does make it all better and makes it all worth it. And I think that's the beauty of growing slowly too, and not going viral and not having that like instant gratification. It's like you can look back and be like, oh wow, like look at everything I've built, like have after a long day with a glass of wine or a mocktail or a cup of tea, and just be like, wow, like I built all of this by myself. Like that is really rewarding. You know how much it took the blood, sweat, and tears to get there.
Yeah. And knowing that you're making a difference in other people's life, and you have employees and you have vendors and you have, also you know that you're kind of the head of the ship, right? So you need to take care of yourself. So if you're down, everything else around you is down because you're the captain, and you need to make sure that your ship is running correctly and that you're taken care of. And that's mentally, emotionally, physically. So I think incorporating a lot of rest, like I think the balance for me is like, I don't really have a social life right now. I don't, like that's just what it is. I work and I have my family, but I know that's going to change down the line too. And I understand that. So I don't, sometimes I'm looking at Instagram like, oh, that looks fun. They're having such a good time. I'm like, I can't keep my eyes open past 8:30. I'm like, no, I wouldn't even be any fun. So it's just, different seasons in life too, or just call for a different kind of self-care routine.
Well, you said like knowing what season of life you're in and that it's okay that you're not the same season of life that other people are in. Like that's something that I, at my age, I'm like, there's like half of my friends are still getting drunk at the bar, and then the other friends are married with kids, and I'm like, which one do I want? Like
you're
some days
probably.
No, I'm like, it depends on the day. To be completely honest, it depends on the day. But like knowing where you're at and knowing what's your priority, like that's one of my favorite things. Like you're the captain of your own ship. Like, and if the ship goes down with you, like you're the last one, and like but you're also the first one. If you go down, everyone else there's gonna be a mutiny. So
right.
You have to take care of you, and it can get really hard to tune everything out and focus on you, but that has to come first, which is why I always ask, especially female entrepreneurs, like, how do they take care of themselves? Because that's something that I think we're starting to talk about more, but it for a very long time was not talked about. And as I get to that next chapter of my life, I'm like, okay, I want to set these habits, these intentions from the beginning and not try to course correct later, because more shit can go wrong then.
Well, and I think for you too, starting, there's an advantage of starting so young. I think, yeah, you can make your mistakes. You have, the naivety to like go into a room and go, okay, I'll just do it and I won't think about it. But I think the other cool thing that I'm not talking about, and you haven't gotten to that point yet either, is that you're going to build your business, and then you're going to be able to decide if you want to stay home with your kids for the full day.
Absolutely.
Or you can decide where your time goes. And I think that's so cool about building your business so young, and then maybe
100%.
doing that journey a little bit later and that's the value that I see for myself, is that I don't have to be there 7 days a week now. And that would have been really hard trying to do that 10 years ago with little kids. And so I really feel like I'm so grateful for that. And I find that there's so much value that nobody tells me where I have to be with my time. I can literally not go in, not do it, and everything's still going to be fine because I've set up such a cool business that a lot of those little details are taken care of. And so I think there's value in that too, when you're looking at it from that perspective of doing your hustle now and getting to that point. And then you can really live in your late 30s, 40s, and you can live how you want to live, which is 100%. So fun.
That's exactly what it was. Like, it's short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. Like, yeah, maybe I don't have a social life much either now, but that's okay. Like, that's okay right now. I take that sacrifice because in a few years, like, it'll, like, I will have built it where it can run without me, but I'm still I'm still the main one. And like, if someone needs me, I'm available to them, but I'm going to have those boundaries of like when my time is for me and my family, or for this or for that. Or no, I think that's so important. I don't talk about that too much because I'm not quite there yet, but it is something I think about and talk about a lot, like offline with my family and friends. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is absolutely a consideration that I think, especially modern day working women who want to, be working moms, but, maybe it is okay to not work for a few years, the first few years, and then go back. And having that, I have a friend right now who actually, she was a paralegal for a female lawyer who she just had a baby. So she lost her job because that lawyer closed down her firm. She's like, it's only temporarily. I might come back in a few months, but this is her maternity leave. So she had to close down the firm because she's the only lawyer. And it was like, my friend was like obviously very sad, but she's like, no, I would do the same thing if I was in her position. And I was like, you know what? Like, actually, so would I. Like, that is probably exactly how I would do it. And having that option is really nice, because our parents and like women 5, 10, 15 years ago would not have been able to make that call. And it's really hard.
There's so much more pressure on being a mom and a CEO. I think it's just a mental load that's not on the men necessarily as it is on the women. It's just, it is. And looking at it from this perspective now that I have, it's totally different. It's
what you said too, of like, some days you're a really good mom, some days you're a really good CEO. You might not necessarily be able to be both that day, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you are both. And like, it's okay to want to be both. Right. And you just have to find how that works for you. I do want to touch on, you mentioned L Space and you've had a couple of activations and we touched on it earlier, but working with influencers and working with brands and, media and things like that. You mentioned to me offline that you guys are really intentional with who you work with in that capacity, and you do a lot more gifting than brand partnerships. Why was that a conscious decision for you guys to, really vet who you work with and in the capacity that you work with them?
Well, I think because your audience is so savvy. Like, our audience is super savvy. I never want it to feel like, oh gosh, this is a paid ad. This is something they don't want to do, but they're doing it anyways. And it feels inauthentic to either the influencer. It feels authentic to my audience. So I'm really conscious about everything just feeling organic. And I think the only way you can really have organic partnerships is if they're really, truly organic. Like, you want the influencer to come in and actually love what they're putting on and love your style, and not be gifted things that they don't feel like is them, and the script that they would never say, and have this ad copy to where it just doesn't make sense. And you can off the bat, like I can always tell, I'm sure you can too, when you look at your favorite influencer and see like, okay, that looks like a totally sponsored ad. I would never in my life see them wearing that or eating that or, using that product. It doesn't even, and sometimes it doesn't align with their values. I always use like kind of this is my example, my favorite example. You can ask my team. I always use it like, okay, 1 minute they're telling you that natural deodorant's better, but the next minute they're, repping a major aluminum deodorant from another company. So it's like, which is it? So I think you confuse your audience too. And for us, we want to stay true to our audience, and we want it to feel like they organically shop in here, which they do. And we want it to feel like it's something that they would actually wear, they actually love. So we call it organic gifting. So when we look for partners like that, we look for people that are going to attend the events, people that are going to keep showing up for us, like we show up for them. It just really needs to feel like this is a partnership versus it being just like a one-time deal that we have with this influencer that honestly may or may not feel like something they would even like or use.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Like I'm not gonna say that influencer marketing doesn't work in a business model like yours, but yours is one of the business models that like, it's not the best form of marketing because what you're offering is so personalized. And this is something that is going to have reach of thousands or millions of people all over that aren't going to be able to use that product or service because they're not in Southern California. Right. So like your ad spend, your marketing budget is better spent elsewhere. And I think it's going back to what we talked about at the beginning with budgeting, but also just intention of like, who are you trying to serve? What are your goals here? And I think too many people are trying to get, and I say this as someone who works in influencer marketing and reviews contracts all day long, like there's just some deals that just don't really make sense. And it's like, why are you doing this? And I'll tell clients sometimes, I'm like, look, I'll support you in doing this deal because that's my job. But my job is also to tell you when I think this is a bad deal. And you take that advice, what you do with that, what you will. But I'm just cautioning you that I don't think this is the right fit. And 90% of the time we agree. They agree. Like, you know what? I had that thought too, but thank you for validating it. So like, I'm willing to walk away now. But like at first they were like, but maybe it would be kind of nice, And I think it goes back to having a team of people on your side and your corner and trusting yourself and your intuition of like, does this make sense for your brand as an individual, as a business? And I think people forget that influencers are a business, but what's the messaging that you want the influencer's brand to have? Does it align with your brand? And so I like that that's something that you guys are very conscious of for anyone who wants to start a business, especially in retail, in a world that is a lot more digital now and a lot less personal. What is your biggest piece of advice?
Identify, I think we kind of touched on this, identify your customer. Who is she? Demographic. Like I want you to go so far with identifying your customer that I want you to know, where does she work out? What does she like to eat? Where is she spending her dollar? Where is she going to Whole Foods? Is she going to Trader Joe's? Is she going to Erewhon? Like we really want to know from like a granular level, like who your girl is or who your customer is, because that will help you identify the product, the need that she has. And that will help you to become successful. And I say she because I work in a mostly women-dominated field. So that's how we all kind of talk. I think that's something that you really need to hone in on. And what niche are you serving? Or are you, reinventing the wheel of something that's already there and you're just making it better? That's also something that you could be doing, that you can say, okay, this already exists, but I know how to make it slightly better. And I think I would have such a really good, feedback if I could take this idea and really amplify it. So I think you really have to look at, again, who is your customer and like, what are you serving in your community with whoever your customer is in order for them to actually be attracted to your business. And then my next piece is that you have to be willing to do what it takes. You can't get discouraged. You can't say, well, I didn't go viral, so now I'm done. I've seen so many people like start different businesses and this is the best business ever. And then, okay, it's almost like a fishbowl. They go around once and they're done with the idea. They forget all about it. And then well, this is the best business. And you need to kind of stay the course. And I think obviously, yes, if it's not working, it's not working. Definitely pivot, maybe do something entirely different. But there's going to be ebbs and flows in business and you really have to stick with it and actually like go through some of those ebbs and flows. And honestly, I think that makes your product stronger. It makes you stronger. as a business owner. And I hope it helps you identify what the actual needs are. And it really helps you define what your business actually is. And I just encourage people to stick with it as long as they can to really understand that, because again, it's not always going to be some, amazing success story right out the gate. And a lot of times in business, it really isn't. They always say it takes 3 to 5 years to really get something going. So I think people have to be patient, and I think they have to take their ego, like you said, out of it and really identify their customer and really see, who that person is that they're really, either if it's a product, if it's a service, who they're catering to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. That's something that I think I talk about a lot on my social media, like my lifestyle entrepreneurship like content, because I see that a lot with young girls. They're like, I want to do exactly what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, do you have what it takes to do this, this, and this? And they're like, oh, and like, they don't even really understand what it takes, but you have to be willing to put in the sweat equity, like you said, and just give it time. Like, it takes so much longer than what people think. And like, it's okay that you're not broadcasting all the wins on social media, or maybe you don't have a win that day. Like, a lot of times what people are putting on the internet isn't necessarily the reality of what's actually happening.
A lot of times not.
Yeah, most of the time.
Not. Yeah.
No. Lisa, this has been so incredible. Where can everybody find you?
So you can find us at Swirl Boutique on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and X. And then you can find me at Lisa Landers Society on Instagram.
And where are your stores so people can shop?
Yeah, so we're in Encinitas, California, San Clemente, California, and Carlsbad, California, with plans to expand. So maybe in a state near you, hopefully soon. And then obviously at swirlboutique.com, you guys can find us. And we have everything that we offer in store is going to be on our website as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.